Hi, I'd like to talk today about ethics within the wider realm of philosophy in general. First of all, what is philosophy? Colleges offer philosophy courses, and most people, when they're asked what philosophy is, they have some vague idea, but oftentimes they're hard-pressed to say what philosophy is. The word philosophy comes from the Greek, well, two words, philosophia, which means love of wisdom. So a philosopher is a lover of wisdom. Philosophy is the love of wisdom. The great philosophers of history like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle were people who loved knowledge and loved wisdom and wanted to understand the world around them. When I ask my students oftentimes what they think of philosophy or what comes to mind when someone mentions philosophy, they say dull, dry, boring stuff. And I'll admit that most books on philosophy are not edge-of-the-seat nail-biters. Philosophical treatises can be very dry and dull and uninteresting, particularly to those who are not familiar with the field and who have not studied it at all. But the questions that philosophers ask are extraordinarily important, and they're questions which all of us ask ourselves at some point during the course of our lives, either consciously or subconsciously. We have to. We ask ourselves these questions because the questions of philosophy are the questions in which we need to answer in order to go about just living. For example, when you decide what you want to do with your life, where you want to live, how you want to live, if you want to go to college or not go to college, if you want to get a job, what kind of job you want to get, who you want to marry, do you want to marry, why do you want to marry, do you want to make money, do you want to do something which is more service-oriented, what is it that you want to do with your life, how do you want to direct your life, what do you expect, do you want to be happy, how do you plan to be happy? These are all questions which are fundamental questions about the nature of life, about our place in the world, and whether there's some things that we ought to do or should do or can do, and how do we do them. This is really the stuff of philosophy. Philosophy talks about everything and anything. Now, historically, the ancient philosophers felt that there were three areas of knowledge which were fundamentally important. These were metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. Now, metaphysics is not a word that you come across every day. It literally means after physics or beyond physics. Aristotle's works were put into a volume, and one chapter was physics, and the stuff after it was called metaphysics, meaning after physics. But historically it's come to mean really beyond physics. What is it that involves the physical world and everything beyond the physical world, if there is something beyond it? The fundamental question of metaphysics is something very simple. And that question is, why is there stuff? Why is there anything, in other words, as opposed to nothing? Why does the world exist? Why does the universe exist? Why do people exist? How did we get here? What makes up the universe? What keeps it going? How did it start? Is it going to end? Is there anything beyond the physical world? Is there an invisible world beyond the physical, visible world? These are all the questions of metaphysics. Really, why is there stuff and how does it work? Secondly, the second important topic for ancient philosophers was epistemology. And epistemology asked the simple question, how do we know stuff? So metaphysics, why is there stuff? Epistemology, how do we know stuff? And secondly then, how do we know that we know stuff? Many of you have probably seen the movie The Matrix. And in The Matrix, Neo one day is pulled out of his reality and sucked into another reality which he is told is the real world, and he's told and he finds out that the world he was living in was simply a dream world, a world created by an evil computer. which had enslaved human beings. This movie is really taken straight from the writings of the French philosopher René Descartes, who a few hundred years ago asked the same question. He had a dream, and in the dream he thought he was awake, and then when he woke up he found out he was dreaming, and he said, whoa, maybe everything is a dream. How do I know that I'm not dreaming, or I'm not subject to some delusion caused by some evil demon? And so he, more than ever before, raised the question, how do we know that what we think is true is actually true? How do we know anything? So the question of knowledge and how we know stuff and how we can verify that what we believe to be true is in fact true, these are fundamentally important questions for philosophers and for other people too. I mean, if you study child psychology, you have to ask the question, how do people learn? How do little infants learn? Are we really a tabula rasa, a blank slate? Or do we have certain forms or categories in our mind which allow us to perceive the world a certain way? So we have metaphysics, epistemology, and the final area of interest, of extreme interest for the ancient philosophers, was ethics. What do we do about stuff? How do we know stuff? Metaphysics. Epistemology, how do we, well, metaphysics, why is there stuff? Epistemology, how do we know stuff? And ethics, what do we do about stuff? What do we do about the stuff that we see around us? What do we do about other people? Is there a right way to live? Is there a wrong way to live? Do we have obligations? Should we visit grandma in the hospital when she's sick? Should we honor our father and mother? Should we, try not to steal or kill or commit adultery or covet our neighbor, be jealous of our neighbor's possessions? Why should we do this? Because the Ten Commandments tell us that that's what we should do? Or are there other rational reasons, philosophical reasons, to lead a certain way of life? What can we expect out of life? Should we expect nothing? Should we expect happiness? If we want happiness, how do we get it? This question of how to live a good life, the right kind of life, is a question of ethics. So these are all questions which were asked by the Greek philosophers some 2,000 years ago or more, and these are still the same questions that philosophers ask today. So in the course of our studies of ethics, sometimes we'll have to talk about metaphysics, sometimes we'll have to talk about epistemology to understand what a particular philosophy is saying and why they're saying it the way they do. But I hope that through this course we can come to understand that these questions are not dry, boring questions. Sometimes people write dry, boring treatises, but the questions are extraordinarily important and things that we all ought to be asking ourselves, whether we are or not. We should be asking ourselves these questions, and hopefully this course will help us to find some of the answers that are useful to us. All right? Thank you.